And so now we're live, and we've got about 4 people will join in here into the Zoom platform. We usually have some people that like to attend live, and then we'll start the multicast in about 3 or 4 minutes. So, one thing I guess, and just well, I guess the one thing, just Steve, just to know, I mean, where are you broadcasting from today?
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. Perfect.
We it's 40 degrees today, so that's beautiful, but we're supposed to get 6 inches of snow tomorrow.
Nice to be there. That's nice.
Yeah.
Sunshine and everything.
It's a beautiful day today. Tomorrow it's supposed to snow all day. So as I get older, I'm less of a fan of winter.
For sure.
Yeah. But I do play hockey, so that's part of winter as well.
Nice. And so, Jules, are you getting the audio in okay? Are you hearing? Does it sound okay to you?
Yeah, everything sounds great to me. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Make sure we have good audio.
Where are you guys all out of, Jules? Where are you out of?
I'm in LA, so it's sunny most of the time. So I can't complain. Can work on my tan all year.
My daughter's
Not that I'm very tan at all, but
my daughter's a pediatric oncologist at Children's Hospital of LA. We were just out there for Christmas, so
wow.
yeah, she lives in Glendale, so we enjoyed our time out there.
Amazing. I'm like right by Glendale, so yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Morton's. What's the name of the breakfast place that is starts with a P? Portello's.
Oh, Portos?
Portos, yeah, Portos.
Oh yeah, that's my place. You can always find me there.
Everybody from Los Angeles knows that.
Yeah, best bakery.
Char, where are you at?
I'm currently in Puerto Vallarta, which means that I live part-time in Colorado and part-time in Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And but a majority of my career has been in human resources and talent management strategy in Colorado with Kaiser Permanente and Banner Health.
I'm skiing Vail next weekend, so I'm excited about that. I've been out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's beautiful in Vail. I was just there. I went to a wedding and my girlfriend was just there over the last year. It's a gorgeous time. I hope you really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Howard, where are you at? Good to meet you.
I'm in
Howard always just jumps in.
I'm in Montclair, New Jersey. It's about a half hour New York City.
Yeah.
I split my time between the city and New Jersey.
Yep, I lived in New York area for 3 years, so I know that area as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Sam, where are you at specifically?
Well, currently I'm in Denver.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been doing a bit of traveling around. I was just telling Jules, and it started out with when there was ice storms in Texas and all these cancellations, and so it's been a quite an adventurous trip, I guess you could say, so far.
That's a nice way to put it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Then we have Sumit. Sumit is from India. Hi, Sumit. Good to see you today.
Hi, Sumit. Nice to meet you.
All right.
Nice to meet you as well.
Well, the top of the hour has snuck up on us, and so I am going to go ahead and well, in just 1 second, share our screen here. Just one
All
moment.
right, let's have some passionate discussion.
Yeah, that's right. And Jules, you give me just 1 moment to get the multicast going.
I'm always ready.
That's right. And then we'll get started here. Just 1 moment. All right, here we go.
All righty. Or it's official. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the People Strategy Forum. My name is Jules. I'm so happy that you could all hop in live, and maybe you're listening to this on our podcast or maybe a little later on, doesn't matter. We're just happy you showed up. We have a really fun topic for you today. We're talking about talent planning for success in 2023. We're still at the very start of the year, so it's not too late to get those talent plans in motion. So we have a very cool speaker for you today to help you do that. But a little bit about the People Strategy Forum. Maybe this is your first time showing up. Maybe you signed up. You don't really know what you're getting yourself into. Welcome. And just to let you know, this really is a fun conversational webinar where we're really trying to engage, energize, and elevate your employees and company. So we come together, we have an expert panel of hosts, which I'll introduce in a moment, and then we also bring on a guest speaker as well. So if you have any questions throughout the session today, make sure you do use the little chat box, address your question to everyone so we can all see, and you can also put in any comments, feedback. We had a really active chat last week. It was a lot of fun for me just reading through everything and throwing the questions out to the speakers, so please don't be shy. Let me introduce you to everybody that we have on the panel today. So I'll start with Char. She's been a regular for a long time, so I'm sure many of you know who she is, but she has years and years of experience working in human resources, talent management, career coaching. She owns multiple small businesses and is actually starting a new venture. I guess we could call it in like assisted living, senior planning, maybe?
Yeah, it's kind of a network to help our senior community. They call it the Silver Tsunami, and that's basically what I do. Yeah.
I love that. Silver Tsunami. That's like the key words there. We also have Sumit, who has years of experience also in talent management, diversity and inclusion strategy. He's helped many companies transform their human resources department and their talent management systems as well. We also have Howard. So Howard is, he works with CompTeam. He has years of experience working as a compensation advisor and also has helped transform companies with their compensation software so that they can be more efficient. We also have Sam, who is the founder and CEO of CompTeam, and he brings us this forum each and every week, and he is an expert when it comes to talent initiatives and compensation programs. So that's our panel. As you can see, lots of experience there in different areas. So, you know, you're in the best hands. Now, our guest speaker is Steve Van Remortel, and he is a software founder, the CEO of MyTalentPlanner. He's also an award-winning author, a speaker, an advisor, entrepreneur, investor. So he's doing it all. He's a busy guy. So we really appreciate that he could take some time out for us to walk us through one of his talent planning methodologies. And it's actually going to be a great conversation because we'll actually be going over one of his talent planning templates. There's 8 steps. So, you know, get your notes ready. And Steve, thank you so much for joining us on the forum today.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
So Steve, can we start off just by learning a little bit more about you? I mean, I would love to hear more about how you got into the business of talent and helping companies out and developing their businesses and so forth. And so what fostered that passion?
So I'll make this a very short story, but I discovered in college one of my passions in life was strategy. I took a night course, and the professor was a business person during the day, and he started talking about how companies differentiate themselves and why would I do business with this company versus that company. And that really started it for me. And then I went back for my master's in strategy after my undergraduate degree. And then I was in sales for 7 or 8 years. And then I got the opportunity to run a company. And we put the strategy in place and put the talent plan in place, and took it from 5 to 30 million. So we just good strategy and talent fundamentals. Well, that majority owner sold, and I had started looking for another business to run. And the common message back to me was, Steve, I'm not ready to give you that job yet, but while you're looking, why don't you help us? And that was 24 years ago. So we started helping people on strategy initially. You know, the consulting firm is stop the vanilla, right? So it's be unique, be different, have a differentiation. And I learned right away after the first year of doing a lot of strategy work that without a conversation around your talent, the strategy really doesn't matter. And so we added talent planning to our strategic planning back in 2000, and we've been doing strategy and talent planning since.
And you have a book as well, isn't that right?
Yeah, I have 3 books actually.
Yeah.
Stop Selling Vanilla Ice Cream was the first one, and that's a book on strategy and talent and how to differentiate your company. The second book is Stop the Vanilla in Your Career and Life, and that's about having a differentiated life and really we define identifying your mint chocolate chip, like what do you love to do and how can you build your career around it. And then the third book that we just are publishing right now is Talent Planning. It's on the topic that we're talking about today.
What? No ice cream theme on the last, in the most recent book. You had me there for a while. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna buy every one of them.
Yeah, we use the ice cream theme, but talent planning is its own unique idea, and so we wanted to treat it that way.
So I love the approach of, I mean, because every company out there is different, right? Making sure that that there is the appropriate approach for them is important. I mean, a lot of companies are so used to seeing. They always ask me, what is the best practice out there? What is Google doing? What is Amazon doing? It's like you should be more concerned about what you're doing and how it fits your people, right? So it's especially in those smaller businesses.
Yeah.
It's important to define your strategic advantage. And so, what is your big drive, and why do you see it important to have a unique approach for each of these businesses that you're involved in?
When you have a clear differentiation, a lot of things take care of itself, right? Your revenues. I mean, when customers have to come to you because they can't get what you provide at the same level from someone else, that drives revenue, that drives your gross profit, and it gives your sales team an easy thing to sell. So having a differentiation is a pillar of success of an organization. And the funny thing about it is that we as consumers, we go to certain stores and certain restaurants because they have something we want, right? And we're willing to pay more for it because it's what we want. Well, that same principle applies to our business as well. So it's really important to have, because you don't want to sell vanilla, right? Then you can get negotiated more on price. So
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Now, as we in the past several years, and of course before then as well, I mean, talent is of course a big factor. But in the recent years, there's been a lot of turmoil in the market. A lot of people trying to decide and redefine what they want to do in life, and where do they want to go? What kind of business do they want to work with, and so forth. And so you've designed an entire approach around this for businesses to follow. Is that right?
Yeah. It's called talent planning. And, the fundamental practicality around it is we have all these plans in our life. I counted that I have 22 plans in my life. Right. I have a workout plan. I have a plan for my weekend. I got a vacation plan. But the irony is how come we don't put a plan in place for the number one thing limiting the growth of our company, or the number one thing where our leaders spend most of their time, right, on the people side of the business. And so when we made that discovery, like it just, I was in that last company I ran, and it's like, man, we were growing. We went from 5 to 10 million, 10 to 15 million. And every conversation the leadership team had was around our talent issues. And we thought, well, why don't we just put a talent plan in place? And we did, and that accelerated us to 30 million. I mean, I learned it as a leader that if you don't plan for talent, your strategy really doesn't matter. It's because you're not going to be able to execute it, right? So it was, when I was running that organization, it was very impactful for me, and that's what led to creating the talent planning process.
I find that very interesting, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Also running my own businesses and supporting companies with their talent management strategy. I often see that organizations put what they call their scoreboard, which includes financials and perhaps the status of outcomes, etc. One thing I'm starting to read in articles, and also what I'm starting to really embrace is that why not be 100% transparent with your talent plan with all the employees in the organization? So example, last year I had a company with 30 employees, and I was extremely transparent with all of my employees as far as trying to find the right talent. Who would you like to work next to? Who does your talent complement, and how they can complement with you? So in the company that I ran, I talked about the number of openings and the talent that we're looking for. And also I actually posted that in our on the wall next to our other strategies, so that the company believes that finance and operations and people are all just important. So Steve, my question is, what do you think of that concept?
Yeah, talent planning is something that is done across the organization. So let's say you have a 3-year vision for your company. So that means that through talent planning, you have a 3-year talent plan for your leadership team, everything that needs to happen over the next 3 years to help us achieve that vision, right? Then you have a 3-year talent plan for each department. And then over time, you put a 3-year talent plan in place for each person. And all that can and should be shared with the organization, because I believe in a total transparent organization, very vulnerable. We call it being hot, honest, open, and transparent. The only exception to that, Char, would be is if the leader, maybe newer in the organization, he or she is building out their team and they need to replace a person, right? So that's where there is some level of confidentiality to a talent plan. But once a leader gets his or her team in place and they feel real good about it, oftentimes they then do share the talent plan in total. So you have to respect the confidentialities of some of the items in that talent plan. But in general terms, I totally agree with you that here's where we're going. Here's what the plan is around our talent, and here's how we're going to get there, because everybody in the organization values from knowing that, right? To your point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I see it as our employees are also the best recruiters ever, because they say,
Totally true.
I work with the best organization ever. I love my leadership.
Yep.
The opportunities are amazing. And it was extremely effective for my organization.
Yeah.
So, but I do agree with you on confidentiality. I mean, obviously I didn't let my employees know that we were potentially exiting one of our senior leaders, and
Yep.
that was confidential from an HR perspective.
Yeah. No, your point about your employees being your best recruiters, our philosophy is we want to teach leaders how to fish, not fish for them, right? So we want to teach them how to do talent planning, how to be a talent planner. So there's a company that we taught how to do this 8 years ago. And when he has an opening in his organization, he has stacks of resumes. He does not have openings in his business. Why? Because the whole community knows that if you go work at this organization, they're going to put a talent plan in place for you. They're going to invest in you. And the irony of that is that when he goes through the process of putting a development plan and a career plan in place for each person that starts in their business, sometimes there isn't a path for them. And he helps them find then what the right path is in another organization. It's breakthrough. And so he has tripled in size he's doubled twice in size in 8 years, because people issues, everybody in his industry is getting, limited by their people issues. He doesn't have those. And so he is dominating in his industry. So that's kind of the result of talent planning.
Well, I do know that you have an 8-step program that to go through. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to discuss those issues. So let's go ahead and start with the first one there. And perhaps we should just go through all 8 really quick. We can list them off to let our listeners know what to expect that's coming up. And then we'll dive into the first one.
Okay. So you want me to list all 8 first, Sam? Is that what you said?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
I can do that as well, because I have them here in front of me. The first one is understand the strengths of your team, and then understand the potential weaknesses and blind spots. Then the third step is knowing your high potentials and how to retain. And then the fourth is understanding those skill gaps and how do you have development and hire people, the right people. And then there's development priorities for each of your direct reports, prioritize promotion, new hires in that timetable, have succession plans in place, and then also putting together action plans. So let's start at the top of all of this, identifying the strengths of talent of your team members.
Yeah. So the first one is, what are the strengths of our leadership? Let's say we're putting a talent plan together for the leadership team. What are the strengths of our leadership team? Like, where are we really good? And I used the example of the last company I ran. One of the strengths of our organization was our sales organization. I mean, we went from 5 to 10, 10 to 15. I mean, we were growing. And that goes to and so backing up the strengths, what do we need to leverage in our organization? Where are we really strong? And how do we take advantage of those strengths on our leadership team? And then that takes us to the next one. What are the blind spots of our team? In that last company I ran, our operations leadership was a blind spot for us, and we had to, then get the right person in that role eventually over time. And so what are the blind spots or weaknesses of our leadership team that we need to solve as part of this talent plan over the next 3 years? That's fundamentally what that step is. The next step is, who are the high potentials we need to retain? Going through COVID and the pandemic is all about retention for companies. Who do we need to, if we retain our core, we're going to be okay. And so really identifying who the high potentials are that we need to retain is really important. And what are the retention strategies that we're going to execute to make sure that we retain them? The fourth one is, with the strategy that we're going to execute over the next 3 years, what skill set gaps do we have on our leadership team that we either need to fill through development, which is your first preference, or through a new hire? And then the next step is, okay, what are the development priorities for the people on the leadership team that can maybe backfill some of those? So an example would be let's say, this is an older example, but let's say we're implementing lean manufacturing. I'll just use that as an example. And we don't have that skill on our leadership team. Do we develop that on our team, or would that be a new hire that we bring in, or would we outsource that? That's a really simple example. And then the next one is, what are the prioritized promotions or new hires we're going to make over the next 3 years to build the team out? And so it may be hiring a person, it may be promoting current people you have, but it's actually, what are the steps we're going to take over the next 3 years to build out the team? And then the last real step is succession planning. Are there any people that we have to make sure that we have good knowledge transfer, that we make sure that we have good succession going on? And then the last step is the talent plan. In our software, MyTalentPlanner, the talent plan for the leadership team can only be seen by the leader. It's their plan, right? And to Char's point, a lot of our leaders share that talent plan in due course, in due time. But this is where they keep their notes and the things that they have to get done, because some of them can't be in the public setting, right? And so the talent plan is the leadership's game plan over the next 3 years on how we get the team from where it is today to where it needs to be to deliver that vision that the team put in place.
Okay, well, let's take it from the top there. I mean, the first thing you mentioned was identifying the strengths of your team. And so is there a particular process you follow to really understand the strengths of each team member and the strengths of the team itself?
So we use behavioral science so that our conversations around strengths and, blind spots and stuff, that, there's a lot of, it's very objective data versus having a subjective or emotional. So we believe in using science to have those types of conversations and identify those types of things. I would say, however, Sam, and I would love to hear any other panelist's opinion, but when you sit down and talk to a leader about his or her team, they don't typically need a lot of process to think through where are we really good on our team and where do we need to shore up our team. So that's what they're thinking through on a daily basis. So we certainly have thought processes we can put in place, but it's something that the leaders, I'm grinding on it all the time, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true. There's a true element to that. And Sumit, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because one thing that I often find is that, especially when talking to leaders, they have they're wearing the rose-colored glasses to some extent. They definitely understand their impression of the team and the strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes they model this after their own behavior and so forth. But I think there can be some blind spots. What do you think, Sumit?
I think sorry, like you said, there definitely can be blind spots, and it's very easy for a leader to fall into the trap of looking for traits that they seem to recognize from a younger version of themselves. And there are examples of this kind of behavior in corporates. There are examples of this in sports and basically everywhere, where your own conscious and unconscious biases lead you to think of your team in a certain way. But to get around that, one of the things that I do when I'm consulting with relatively smaller or medium-sized companies is to start thinking about succession and to start thinking about scientific ways of competency assessment right in the beginning. So before you grow too large and before some of those biases start damaging your organization, address them proactively and start when you're small. It'll get embedded into the organizational DNA is what I suggest at that point.
And the other thing I think, Steve, I'd like to hear your opinion on here is that in forming different types of teams, because right now we often hear a lot about diversity, inclusion, and so forth, and there's been science out there to show that good diversity can really create a high performing team in different aspects. But then there is also so let's just talk about the different types of team strategies, right? They might have creativity, maybe one of the objectives, or innovation, maybe one of the objectives of a team, where you might want to have a very diversified thought of people that have different experiences to create that advantage. And then others, it may be that it's speed to market, right? Being fast, and in there it may be more advantageous to have people of similar mindsets, and that can deliver that speed without a lot of dialogue and take action. So what are your thoughts? Have you witnessed these different types, and what's your approach in moving forward?
Yeah, and that's really to me, that's the essence of talent planning. So people often say to me, so talent planning includes your strategy, your talent, and your execution. And people often say to me, Steve, why is strategy in your talent planning process? Well, in order for us to know what talent we need, we first have to know where we're going, right? So if our strategy is to drive innovation, then our talent plan has to bring the skill sets to deliver innovation. I always, being from Green Bay, Wisconsin, like the Green Bay Packers lose on Sunday, there's a lot of bad decisions made on Monday because it's based on if the Packers won or lost. That should have nothing to do with it, right? It should be, what does our talent plan need to be to deliver this strategy and this vision that we put together? So to your point, if innovation is one of the pinnacles or the pillars of our strategy, then how does our talent plan backfill that, right? So that's what, to me, one of the coolest things about talent planning is it ties all of our talent decisions, our talent plans to our strategy, which fundamentally should be where it's tied to.
Okay, so sorry, Sumit, did you have something that you wanted to add in there?
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking of what you said earlier about inclusion and diversity, Sam, in the context of talent planning. So this research of diverse teams being more innovative is often wrongly implemented by companies. If you're not doing the talent planning bit, simply collecting diverse people is not going to make you more innovative. So you have to have your business strategy well defined. The reason why diverse teams seem to be more innovative is that companies who've already done the talent planning bit and they go on to build diverse teams, they find value in those great ideas, and they often have shorter times to market as well because it's embedded into the way they work. So this research, I've seen it misinterpreted by organizations that seem to believe that just by collecting 5 people from different parts of the globe or from different racial, educational, different kinds of backgrounds, you're going to be more innovative. No, that's not happening.
That's a great point there, Sumit. Perfect. So, Steve, as we were talking about understanding the strengths of the team and the executive context as well. So you've gone through that analysis. You've determined the strategic objective of where you want this team to go. Is it innovation, as Sumit said, or is it speed the market, or is it whatever that may be? And then you identify that there's gaps in your team. So what do you do next?
So then you lay out the timetable to fill the plan to fill those gaps. Is it through development? I mean, a majority of leaders, they want to try to promote within, they want to fill gaps through development. And so that's the primary focus. Do I have somebody on my team that can fill this gap? Can we, if they don't have the hard skills to do it, experience and education, can we develop those? If we don't think we can get there through development, then is the new hire, or would we outsource it and use maybe a consultant to help us bring that skill set? So that's what comes next, is the planning part of talent planning. How do we make sure that we have all the skill sets we need on the team to deliver the strategy that we put together?
And just to dig in a little bit there, when we're talking about, okay, so we have this gap. Let's look into the organization to see if we can find somebody that we can develop for this particular gap, or let's look outside and bring in somebody new. And so when companies, often I find, especially in developing companies, they fail to look in their own talent pool. They fail to look into their own organization. And so what are some of the problems that you see, associated with that failure of looking at your internal team first?
To me, one of the core tenets of talent planning and core tenets of what you just talked about, Sam, are one-on-ones. When you're having the one-on-ones and you're developing the total person, right? In today's world, you just can't develop the work person. The younger generations, the millennials, they'll leave for sure because they want their organization to invest in the total person. And so as you're having one-on-ones, you're having the conversations with people that this is really where I want to go. This is what I want to accomplish. This is where this is my career path through this organization. And so then all of a sudden you're hearing where they want to go, and how does that now fit into our talent plan, right? So one-on-ones, to me, if a company's not doing consistent one-on-ones, their turnover is going to be higher. They're not going to understand the skill sets as well that they have in their organization, because the one-on-one is the opportunity for a two-way conversation on how can they bring more to the business, but how can the company bring more to them and invest more in them. And so in my talent planner, we built one-on-ones in there because they are fundamental to talent planning. Because if you don't do one-on-ones, you're going to get 2-week notices. And if you did a one-on-one every month, you would have known that person was, disenfranchised or was thinking about leaving. And it gives you the opportunity to resolve that issue, or at least work through it, versus just having an open position that I wasn't prepared for.
Steve, what's your feeling about the skills inventory, allowing employees to self-identify skill sets that they have? Because sometimes I find in the past, you have people that are very quiet, introverted, and they may have skills that you have no clue that they have, or background and experience and things that you would never imagine. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I didn't know that. We could, absolutely capitalize on this.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's a combination of the objective, the behavioral science, and the conversations, the subjective, and understanding their total skill set that they bring to the table. A lot of times when we're doing interviews for a client, or we're coaching them on how to interview, a lot of times people will leave off previous positions they had because they think it adds too much to the revenue or to the resume. But in fact, a lot of that experience will make you better at the job that you're applying for, right? So to me, it's a combination of objective and subjective to really understand their total skill set. And to me, that's all documented in their talent plan, in their individual talent plan. Yeah.
And actually, we had a question from the audience, which kind of ties in with that. And their question was, when do you think it's appropriate to promote? And should they link it to when they do the performance evaluations, or just at any time of the year and to the discretion of management?
My opinion is that performance evaluations are not a one time a year thing. They are consistent conversations in your one-on-ones all the time. So to me, it's about the timing and executing the talent plan. It's not tied to the evaluation. So to me, it's any time of year that it makes sense to make those moves, you make them. And you're having your consistent. One of the other features that we built into my talent planner was start, stop, continue. I think it's one of the most effective, one of the simplest tools that you can use in a conversation, because it's what can the company start doing, stop doing, continue doing to help me perform better? But then what do I need to start doing, stop doing, continue doing? So I do though, I have start, stop, continue conversations consistently with each of my team members. And so it's a consistent evaluation on both sides, not just once a year and how are we doing?
I think that's very important to consider. Well, one other thing I would like to add in there as well is if we're thinking about the right times for promotions or the right times for certain types of salary actions, the first thing that we need to think about is that overall an important company-wide approach. So as far as fairness, the first thing is if we're a small organization, then it's quite easy to do these things on a one-off basis when you're having those discussions, but as you grow and you become larger and larger, and pretty soon you might find yourself having 100 people or maybe 200 people, 300 people, and so forth. Then you start thinking about, okay, well, if I continue with these one-offs, how much administration is this adding to the organization? And are we baking in some inconsistencies in our process? Are we being fair to everybody else in the organization when doing this promotion now or doing this pay increase now, when we're not doing this all together and really leveling each other for fairness? And so I think that doing this, the one-off process is great for those agile small companies. But as you grow, you need to start thinking about consistency and fairness and process administration that makes things a little bit more complex.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a valid point.
So the other piece that you mentioned there is high potentials. And one thing I thoroughly believe in is that all organizations, big or small, need to know who their top 10, 15% of high performers are at all times. And we shouldn't expect them to be the same people every year. I mean, people have good years, they have bad years, and so forth. But we do find those individuals that are just exceptional, and we want to invest in, and we want to include in succession plans and develop in the organization. So what is your process, Steve, of identifying those high potentials that we need to retain, and what should we do next with them?
The process of identifying high potentials. I mean, again, I'll go back to the one-on-ones is obviously one way. And the high potentials stand out. I mean, they stand out in your organization because they're excelling in their space, right? In their area of responsibility. Again, when you have a conversation with a leader and you ask them who their high potentials are, they pretty quickly have that figured out. Like who could, I asked them the question, who could you least afford to lose right now? And by answering that question, you just answered who your high potentials are. Who do I have to retain?
And then once we have identified them and we know who they are in each group, and we've what's the next step to ensuring that we retain those people, and we're keeping their attention?
So we use this behavioral science called the driving forces, and it measures a person's their workplace motivators. Why do they come to work? It's the why. Okay. And if you feed their number one and number two why, depending on the level of intensity of that why, your retention rates are going to go way up. A majority of people leave organizations because their why is not being fed. And so behavioral science tells us their why, and then we put strategies in place to feed their why, and the retention goes way up. Great example. Number one motivator in the workplace right now is to learn. It's called the intellectual driving force. And so I have a team member, one of my direct reports has he has a 95 out of 100 on his intellectual. So I'm buying him a book once a month. I'm sending him to conferences. We have our one-on-ones. He always has a development plan in place, because if I continue to give him the opportunity to learn, the retention rates go way up. So retention to me is around feeding the why of each person on your team.
And you mentioned having that development plan in place, and for each one of your team members. So can you tell us the process of putting together that development plan? I mean, you mentioned some people they have a different why. They may thrive on having that education and so forth. But are there other aspects of development that we can highlight there?
Yeah, so we talk about in the development plan that we built out, there's their do's and don'ts of communication, right? How if to effectively communicate with Steve, what are the do's and what are the don'ts? We talk about the strengths that they bring to the organization. What do we need to leverage? We talk about their blind spots and their growth opportunities. We talk about their professional and their personal goals. We talk about their potential career paths in the organization. We also talk about what relationships do they need to develop in the organization or externally to facilitate their development. And then it's really about putting 2 or 3 action plans in place that are focused on the development priority that has the greatest impact on your professional or personal life. And I've done thousands of development plans, and I'll tell you, let's just say we're focusing on 3 development priorities. At least one of those will be personal, if not 2, just because, you know, life's not easy, right? And we all have issues. And if somebody told you that they don't have an issue, that's their first issue, right? It's really about being focused on each individual and putting the development plan together that makes sense for them. So that's just gives you some idea of what we see as in development plans.
Now, as far as just when we're looking at development plan, of course, that what's the timeline that we should be thinking about in this plan? Of course, you can have a development plan that's saying, okay, well, in 10 years, I want to go from A to Z. But what is when we're thinking about the timeline and making things in bite-sized pieces, I guess you could say, or
Yep.
certain milestones. What timing should we consider on this?
So in talent planning, to make the process agile, we execute in sprints. So you could have a 3-month sprint or a 4-month sprint, or you could have a 6-month sprint mostly. I like 4-month sprints 3 times a year because it gives our team longer runway to execute, right? And so I tie updating the development plans. You're constantly looking at them in your one-on-ones, and you make tweak changes in those one-on-ones, but I kind of tie the updating the development plan with our sprints, because in this sprint, we're focused on these goals, and then we reevaluate our goals, and then we set our goals for the next 4 months. And maybe those goals in that 4 months drive certain development in certain team members. And so I create we call it the execution cadence. What is the cadence or rhythm of the organization to execute this plan? And I find that if companies execute in 3 or 4 month sprints, they tie their development to those sprints as well.
That's great. And thinking about how that comes together there. So the other piece, of course, when we think about development and then having that development plan, and then also having a succession plan, how do those 2 pieces come together? Are they somewhat related? How do you execute on that?
Yeah, so a succession plan would be part of a person's development plan. So, I'm getting later in my years. I'm going to change my, based on your comment earlier, where people are looking at work differently. Like I want to do a career shift, and I'm going to be exiting the organization. I have one client that, they're investing in the total person, and one of his direct reports wants to be a chef, right? And he fixes generators right now. And so they're investing in him becoming a chef. And eventually he will leave the organization and become a chef. That's one of the upsides, if you will, of investing in people in both professional and personal. And so they're putting a succession plan in place. So succession planning is identified as part of your development plan if you're the person that, is the one that's making the change, if you will.
And one big piece, and we've gone through a lot of your 8 steps there. But one thing I want to highlight on before we get too far away from it is managers meeting with their employees, managers developing their employees, creating succession plans. All this typically requires a good management acumen, right? So that but a lot of companies out there, that's one of their biggest pain points, is that their managers aren't developed effectively. They're not having those great conversations. They're not developing their people. And so when we're thinking about creating the talent plan together and executing on this for a company, where does manager training come into place, and how should that intersect here?
Yeah, I'll give you a live example. Right now, I'm working with a company that has a lot of turnover in their manufacturing space, and so what we're putting in place is we're going to put a talent plan in place, and we're going to train the frontline supervisors on talent planning and how to do one-on-ones and how to all everybody really wants, all employees really want, is to know that their organization cares about them, right? And that they invest in them. And so we're going to start doing one-on-ones with, the frontline people, the people on the manufacturing floor, the production team. And we're going to treat them just like we treat somebody that's working in the office, right? So you train talent planners at every level of your organization. It starts with the leadership team first, and then you train your managers, you train your frontline supervisors. Our core strategy with this business is to train their frontline supervisors on talent planning so that we can ebb this turnover, this retention issue we have, and start investing in those people just like they were working in the office, like we've been doing with everybody else. And so you train talent planners at every level of the organization, because then you're retaining your people, and they're using processes and tools that help them, identify the high performers or high potentials, put succession plans in place, and think through all the things that are in a talent plan. So you talent plan at every level of the organization, and you have people that are trained on doing it at every level of the organization. So here our focus isn't on necessarily training the leadership team on talent planning. We're training the frontline, our first managers, our first level of managers. We're training them on talent planning. And I tell you right now, that's going to change the direction of that organization. It's going to dramatically shift the amount of, right now their growth is limited because they don't have enough people. They have like 40 positions open. This is going to, I will never tell you that talent planning will take it down to 0, right? But it'll take 40 positions open down to 10, right? Something along those lines. And think about how much time we just saved, and effort and resources we just saved by having 10 positions open versus 40. So that would be my answer to that question, Sam.
Great. Well, let's take this conversation to something that's a little bit more timely and sensitive, I guess you could say, what's going on right now. I mean, right now there's a lot of companies out there that are doing layoffs. I think here in the Denver area, Zoom announced that they're laying off 1,500 people, 15% of their workforce, and so forth. And this is other companies and smaller companies are also considering this in their manufacturing, saying, hey, there's a slowdown. They just they made the overhired and so forth. But so they might be going through a layoff. Now, during layoffs, the surviving employees start thinking, maybe you should jump off this sinking ship, it's like that, and go somewhere else, and losing their key players. And then and other companies are saying, and leaders at the same time are going, well, maybe we need to add some AI into our organization, or add in some productivity enhancements and to replace some of our talent. So there's a lot of potential fear that is going on out of all of this. So when we're thinking about right-sizing the organization, managers having effective conversations, what are you seeing in your space about how do you advise your leaders on these issues?
So our space is SMBs. So we focus on small to medium-sized businesses, and I am not experiencing layoffs yet there. I'm experiencing shortages. We're seeing the layoffs, in the large organizations, but I'm not experiencing it at least in my space, Sam. So that's not a conversation that I have very often. But if I would need to have that conversation, it's really around the talent planning would be around making sure that we retain the essential skills, the essential people to execute our strategy. One of the things that always fascinated me, early in my career, I did a couple turnarounds. And when somebody comes in to do a turnaround, they say, we got to get rid of 100 people, and they just like cut. Well, it's got to be based on some thought process that, hey, we need that skill set of that person. Like we can't so it's based on need and skill set, not based on numbers. So that would be my take from a standpoint for larger organizations right now, because I know that larger organizations are experiencing that. But again, I'm not experiencing that in the SMB space as much.
Yeah,
Would you
well,
guys concur with that? Would you guys concur with that? Or are you seeing that as well? Okay.
yeah, definitely glad that that's not in that smaller category that you're experiencing yet. But Sumit and some of the larger global companies that have been doing layoffs, what are you seeing as the big consequences of their actions by having this come too easy to them?
I think the biggest consequence is that there's not enough conversation about the people who are still part of the organization and where do they fit into the talent plan. So is it more an outcome of simply hiring projections that have gone wrong during the pandemic, and now companies are having to quickly readjust because of recessionary fears and various other economic criteria? But what about people who are either sitting on the fence and who are essentially in freeze mode, thinking about, am I going to be next? And people who've been high performers and they fear, I'm not going to get paid enough, or there's going to be no merit increase because we seem to have hit a difficult phase. So I think it would be good to extend some of what Steve spoke about to folks who are currently in the organization, and we need to kind of focus more on making it worthwhile for them, extend the right kind of support to them, because in all seriousness, you do need those folks to take the organization forward and to prevent more people from losing their jobs.
Totally agree there. Well, I know that we are approaching the top of the hour, so I do want to just take a moment to recognize our next week's speaker. So we're going to be having Pili Martinez join us, and she's going to be talking about the impact and alignment in talent management. And so basically, this is from the acquiring that talent all the way through development and so forth. And so Pili's going to take us through that journey. So I'm excited to have her back on the forum to kind of go through this. All right, so Steve, as we kind of wrap up our call here, Jules, I mean, let's see if we have any other. I know there's been a pretty active chat. If there's any other questions that we can bring up for Steve before he tells us a little bit more about his business and software.
Yeah, I just wrote it in. So if anyone has any last minute questions, throw them in there. Char, did you want to touch to your point that you put in there as well? Because I know you've been quiet.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. Obviously, sitting in the executive seat as a chief HR officer or HR strategist in talent management strategy, obviously we're taught that we need to be credible activists as it relates to talent management strategy. I would say being in those positions, it's been a struggle in the traditional aspect of HR, attempting to influence the executive team in regards to talent management strategy and increasing the competency level of an HR professional to understand. If you see in the SHRM study, which might be a little outdated, only 20% of our HR teams or talent management strategists have the competencies to do that. So I know we're running short of time here, but what is your advice to the people strategist, HR professional in an organization that needs to influence the executive team to really take the time to focus on personal development and succession management and all of the discussions that you discussed today? What would you recommend that professional do?
I would just keep it simple and just say, hey, how many, do you got a plan for your weekend? And the leaders, the executives can say, yeah, I do. We're doing this. Then, and what's the number one issue that we face on a daily basis? People, our people challenges and our people stuff. Then how about we put a talent plan around that? I mean, it's just, that's the one thing that really when I discovered talent planning, I'm a very practical person, and it's so simple, right? It just makes total sense. So I would just have them feel it in their life. Like, ask them, how many plans do you have in your life? And I do this with leaders. When I speak, the first question I ask them is, do you guys have a plan for your weekend? Do you have all these plans? And they're all shaking heads. They're shouting out all these plans. Then how about we put a talent plan in place? And they're all like, okay, let's do it. Right. So keep it simple and really impress upon them that not only is this something that we should do, but the companies that are going to do it are the ones that are going to win in every industry. The companies that win at talent win in their industry. They dominate their industry. And so I would just keep it simple, talk about the how, what and the how. And I would think that my experiences, that impacts leaders to movement, to action. Hopefully I answered your question.
No, I love your response, because I have a tendency to be a little too complicated with my 10-page
Me as well.
talent management strategies. Yeah, I think you're right. Keep it simple. And I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
And I love that approach. So thank you for that response.
And one other thing I'd bring up too, is we continue to share talent planning and MyTalentPlanner with a lot of organizations, is that there's this thought process that, man, talent planning is going to take, I don't have enough time on my plate the way it is. How am I going to add this to my plate? And I will tell you right now, if you have, I'll just use the example we used earlier for simplicity purposes. If you have 40 open positions and now you have 10, you just took a lot of time off your plate, right? So talent planning does not take more time, it saves time. And so there were two really drivers that really motivated us here to build MyTalentPlanner. It was, the generational math shows us that talent is going to continue to be the #1 issue for SMBs for years to come. And then the technology disruption is happening in that space, in the strategic HR space. So more and more companies, especially those that are proactive in addressing their talent issues and their challenges, are using technology to do it. And so that's what really drove us, is there was not something that SMB leaders could use technology-wise to make it easier. And I've been doing talent planning for 23 years manually. And now I was with the company doing talent planning yesterday with the use of technology. It makes it so simple, because all you do is log in and everything you did last time is there, and you just keep building on it. You don't have to search in paper and all that kind of stuff. And so my encouragement to companies is to really think about how would talent planning bring value to your organization? And MyTalentPlanner is just a technology tool that helps automate it and scale it. And so, when I go into a room to talk to leaders, we focus on talent planning. And if they think it'll help their organization, then MyTalentPlanner is an option for them, right? It's a tool that help them do it easier and quicker.
Great. Jules, did we have another question there?
Yes, we have a couple more. I just put in, if we don't have time, we'll make sure we get them answered, and we can put it in like the notes. But is there anywhere that people can find the stats for companies that do have talent plans and those that don't have talent plans?
Statistics, is that your question?
Yeah.
We have a slide deck that has some statistics in it, proof of concept, if you will, that it works. So yeah, I have those available, and I can make those available to you however you want to distribute them. So yes.
Perfect. So how can our listeners get a hold of you there, Steve?
Steve at mytalentplanner.com. And so we have two entities here. We have MyTalentPlanner, which is the SaaS software company. And that's at mytalentplanner.com. And then our strategy and talent planning consulting firm is stopthevanilla.com, and Steve at stopthevanilla. So at either address, I'd be more than happy to share talent planning, share MyTalentPlanner with any leader. And my fundamental, message to them is think about where you're headed, think about where everything is going, and consider it for your organization. And the results of what it does for your organization are really clear, to Jules' question a minute ago.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your time here, Steve. Before we go, I know people can reach out to your website and so forth, but can they find your book on Amazon? Is it available in audio?
Yeah. So the book so Stop Selling Vanilla Ice Cream and Stop the Vanilla in Your Career and Life are on Amazon. Talent Planning it's an ebook, which is downloadable off of mytalentplanner.com. We're publishing it in the next month. I'm just finishing all that up. Writing a book does not fit my natural behavioral style. So
I hear you.
so, but and just reach out. Our philosophy is we want to teach you how to fish, not fish for you. So if there's something you're trying to get done, we'll give you the templates, we'll give you the process, and go for it. Because talent planning is something that organizations take on and own. Talent planning is not something that you could have a consultant do with you all the time. It's something that you embed in your organization. You create this culture of talent planning, and it's something that all of your leaders and managers over time will do. So it's really something that is very easy to self-implement.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, for having sharing your knowledge today.
Yeah.
Really, it's been a great conversation, and I think that it's helped a lot of people out there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I love the People Strategy Forum. I mean, there's not a more important strategy in your life than that right now if you're leading a business, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
I love the forum. So thank you for having me.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, and see you next week on the People Strategy Forum. We'll bring up some, keep these important important topics coming your way for sure.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.
Thanks, everyone.
You.
Bye.
Bye.